100% sure we'll have a great discussion, and so I'll introduce our panelists. You've already met a few minutes ago Rt Hon Lord Pickles, the United Kingdom Special Envoy for post-Holocaust issues. We have Dr. Rt Friedman, the Pedagogical Director of the Rt Hon International Institute for Holocaust Education, Director of the Digital and Online Education Department at the Rt Hon International Institute for Holocaust Education. And then we have several Latin participants. We have Professor Dallas Simonis, the Director of Latin Academy of Culture, and his other hat, I think worth mentioning, is that he's a prominent Latvian film director and the director of the first Latvian Holocaust-themed movie, The Mover, or Father Night, some of you may know it, the Latvian title. Dr. Edvin Savats, the historian at the Department of Public History here at the Museum of Occupation, but also a history teacher with a long record of several educational institutions, and currently in Greek Classical Gymnasium, and a member of Latvian History and Social Science Teacher Association. We have Ms. Laura Nikolova from Liepājas Draudzīga Aicinājuma Secondary School, and also a member of board member of Latvian History and Social Science Teachers Association. And last but not least, we have Mr. Edgars Bērziņš, who is a doctoral candidate at the Department of Pedagogy and Psychology at the University of Latvia. It's one of his hats. Another of his hat is the head of the Education Department of City of Jūrmala, and he's an expert at the Cambridge International and European Observatory for History Teaching. So we have people who are decision makers, who are educators, who are public historians, who are multipliers of knowledge. And the first question I want to ask you to reflect on this very topic of our discussion, what we call the Crossroads of Generations, new methods and new approaches in Holocaust education. So we discussed that we are basically soon will be without witnesses, that we have a new generation which is used to other teaching approaches that we are. And so how do you imagine this future of Holocaust education in the coming 10, 15 years? What changes will come, and what maybe some new topics within the field will become relevant? Not only new methods, but also some new accents. So probably Lord Pickles. So you have the mic, and you just switch it on. There is a button.
And it goes green. You can't deny the sophistication and widespread use of artificial intelligence, AI, its potential to solve the world's challenges. But let's not forget the dangers. Social manipulation being a key concern. The threat associated with AI in safeguarding the record of the Holocaust are many, including the potential of manipulation by malicious actors, the introduction of falsehoods, or dissemination of biased information, and the gradual erosion of public trust in authentic records. The latest wave of anti-Semitism arrives at a perfect storm when reliable news outlets are at their weakest. Newspaper readership has plummeted. Regional and local newspapers have disappeared, and the once powerful nightly news bulletin is diminished in its influence. One of the most graphic uses of false narrative of AI is the tools to create deep fakes. As this decade progresses, the number of survivors who witnessed the Holocaust as children will move from contemporary memory into history. In anticipation of this, much effort is being made to secure testimony and to protect archives, and the very depth of this knowledge might be our Achilles heel. You don't need programming skills to create a deep fake. You can make it free in less than 30 seconds. Using many deep fake applications, we live in an era which seeing is no longer believing. The consequences of cheap, widespread fakery are likely to be profound. It's possible to imagine a Holocaust survivor with false words put into their mouths. The concentration camps were not that bad. We had plenty of food. We played cards on a Thursday with the SS and such like. How do we meet this challenge? The first thing that we need to understand is AI is here to stay. That governments will always be playing catch-up to cheap, widely used AI. The second thing is we ourselves will use AI to improve our archives. It will find links and connections. We will be able to improve training and teaching. We need to enhance AI literacy, research skills, so that users know how to verify AI-produced text. Key to this is the necessity of understanding large language models, and those in the large language model community will need to understand the Holocaust to ensure accurate representation. Put simply, large language models are a type of artificial intelligence that uses machine learning algorithms to replicate human language. It uses massive data to develop its ability to translate languages, predict text, and to generate content. As large language models become more complex and human-like about their diversity, energy requirements, ability to make decisions, and to use the content creators. This is why large language models is so important in our field. The big tech companies struggle to understand the issues around the Holocaust in the same way that we struggle to understand AI. The intersection of understanding between policymakers, AI experts and Holocaust experts needs to grow. That is why we focus on large language models during a special AI conference in London, which formed part of the UK-IRA presidency. The conference provided an opportunity to learn from each other and to expand our work. I'm not saying that AI holds all the answers, but we should not fear AI. We need to embrace it, understand it, how we can use it, and how we can enhance our work.
When I'm looking at the question of Crossroads of Generations and Holocaust education, I think sometimes that I'm a bit more depressed because I feel the questions that are being raised here are the ones that we are always facing. Eventually, it's the questions about how to make Holocaust education relevant and still authentic. This is a question that is accompanying us all the time when talking about education. I think that the question of the second question of the survivors who will not be with us anymore is also a question which actually, I remember myself creating materials 20 years ago, thinking about these times. And yes, those times came on one hand, and on the other, nothing is new. The question of how to deliver the story, that unbelievable story, that the story that we cannot even bring into our minds to believe, is always there. And therefore, even though it might be a bit hard to think about because the question that comes back and back to us, on the other hand, it takes us back to the core. This is a story about human beings. We need to, as was said here already, we need to help our students in literacy, digital literacy, because the digital problems were already, we knew them for many, many years. We had those same dilemmas. We need to remember that we're talking about a true story, historical story. We know a lot of methods of how to convey the historical story. Yes, we have to go back to the core, we have to go back to the human story, to empathy, as again was mentioned here before, human rights, against hatred, against anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, people will be people. And we know that anti-Semitism probably will be here to stay. So we need to go back to the core. And yes, use technology. As was said here, we need to know it. We also need to help our students to embrace it and to make the best in order to help us go on and trying to create a better world.
Yes, for me, as being part of the field of audiovisual media and filmmaking, of course, I can refer to this topic more from this perspective because I would like to distinguish maybe two things, or maybe emphasize them. First, that we have to realize, or we have to, maybe we already have realized it, but we have to innovate once and again underpoint it that cinema films are the most prominent or impactful creators of historical knowledge, and this means that the general knowledge that we have about Holocaust and also Holocaust education in a public sense, it relies on cinema, and here many problems arise because first it's misinformation, it's ethical representation, different questions that are important in the context of how we create films about Holocaust, and there are three main directions that we can now distinguish in the film history. One is Holocaust history as drama in films, Holocaust history as document in films, and Holocaust history as experiment in films. And what is interesting that when we think of the future of Holocaust movies, the Holocaust history as experiment, it has the most prominent parts maybe, because here you see how you are activating the society while creating an experiment narrative, narrative as an experiment, and you activate the public or the audience to make distinctions and to make some kind of self-judgments about the topic and also to learn more. This is one thing that I wanted to emphasize. The other thing is, of course, when we talk about the possibilities of new audiovisual media, of course, there are many technologies and also tools that we have to embrace, because as you can imagine, that many things could be used for the purpose of Holocaust education. It's digitalizing, and it's already happening, like digitalizing testimonies of witnesses, it's augmented reality, it's virtual reality, it's different kind of audiovisual content in social networks. So basically there are quite many fields where you can develop let's say, the accessible tools for the younger audiences, because we have to understand that the tastes and the perceptions of younger people is different, and that they are embracing totally different approaches in the ways how they learn things, and in that case, although in this case we have to follow that path, although not maybe to become banal, naive, or even like to create false narratives, but just to understand how we can verify narratives represent in new audiovisual forms. And that for me is maybe the most difficult task, to overcome this inner obstacle where you just want to kind of trash any new technology because you feel that it's naive or banal in its form, but unfortunately or fortunately, we don't know yet, this is the form how younger audiences are communicating between themselves, and this is something we have to take into account. And this is a difficult task, but we are responsible to do that task.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here today, and speaking of artificial intelligence, I think it's the right time and right place for each and all of us. As it goes into the rhetorics of crisis, in here we see that it happens now, and we don't have time for discussion whether to accept it or not. That's a fact, right? And all of us, we are to agree that there is no path backwards, there is only way in front of us. And therefore, I'd like to build on, as colleagues mentioned, building new narrative. And in here, according to the theory of narratives, there are three key elements or three key perspectives for each narrative we are to build, whether it's about Holocaust, whether it's about any other great issue of the past as the crucial elements of history. First of all, those are actors. Artificial intelligence can help us stating key actors of particular events or happenings, yet comes the question of the significance and the representation of the way, how and where and when and why this particular person, this particular actor being involved and is important. Therefore, building the understanding of the involved actors as persons, as events, as places, as all countable and non-countable terms. Second of all comes the storyline, and this is the most difficult one. As with actors, it's quite simple. Where is the sentence subject? The sentence subject is any person that's been important in history. That comes when we are speaking about the storylines, we can look from multiple points of view. We can have a look at the first layer. There's a fact, something happens, and then artificial intelligence isn't that trained enough to help us building the storyline that is rigorous, based on the research that will be chosen by the artificial intelligence platform we are using. And then last but not least, the language. Colleagues mentioned already that's a challenge as well. And before this panel, I had a tiny conversation with a colleague of mine, and we agreed of two key things. First of all, the question is about creativity. So whether a person is using his or her full potential in building understanding or message or narrative or story. It doesn't matter what a person is willing to build. On one hand, on the other hand, is a question of rigorous academic research. Therefore, the key question for us for today is how we can balance historical authenticity with AI and learning tools in education overall. We know that there are multiple new methods and new approaches in education overall, as at the moment we are at this switch or shift from the old tradition where every educator is asking a question, what am I doing as a good teacher, and then what's my students are doing, towards the new approach that states how my students are learning and what then I am doing as the educator. Therefore, this is the key question to ask for each and all of us in terms of three perspectives. First of all, we as educators, I believe we have educators here, right? Yeah, true. So we'd like to know what our audience is and then to build a message. Therefore, we can use artificial intelligence if we have stated specific criteria of the message we would like to convey. Second of all, we as researchers, we need to know the audience, what is the target audience for our research. Therefore, we'd like to indicate again several criteria. And for every message we are stating, we always have to look whether it is honest, so it is based on facts, honesty, and then as well academical, whether it is precise in terms of academical research. To conclude, last year I participated at the conference organized by the University of Latvia with the presentation of the research I conducted myself, where I analyzed a student work and I asked 3 independent educators to analyze student essay. So there were 3 results, like goods, almost goods, and this is excellent. So there were results from real life human beings, where it's equal. Then I asked artificial intelligence to assess the students' work using set of criteria. The same set of criteria I gave to the experts, the educators. And after 10 times, the median was the same. Yet, the conclusion is we can use the artificial intelligence services to support the technical part of our research and work. Yet, we have to be careful with allowing artificial intelligence being creative, because humans' nature is being creative, not the artificial intelligence one. Thank you.
I'm a practitioner. I have been working in school as a history teacher for 17 years, so I can speak about these things from the perspective of a practitioner. And this is what I would like to do, to paint a picture of what is happening in schools at the moment regarding AI tools. And what we are witnessing in schools is a push for AI tools in education. And teachers some are very cautious, some are curious, some deny, some accept openly these new tools. But overall, it feels a bit that we are not exactly doing the same mistakes that before, but we are going the same path, taking the same path that we took when we started to push for the digitalization in education, or when we started to abolish classical teaching practices and approaches. So we are doing something that we don't know what the result is going to be, what the impact is going to be. We don't know. We are experimenting at the moment, and that's how a lot of teachers feel at schools, that they don't know what are the possible implications of using AI tools in education. And here I agree with Edgar completely that there is only a road in front of us, there is no going back. So what we need actually is less talking about AI tools and more training, professional development for teachers, how to use these tools, preparing lessons, grading papers, making tasks, exams, and so on. We need these things. We needed them yesterday, actually, and that's one thing that we should focus on: preparing teachers, training teachers how to use these tools with effectively. Let's say effectively, not just how to catch student in cheating, that the student has used AI tools in essay, for example. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Roberts?
I'm happy to be here with you today. Yes, many things are already said. Thank you for that. Still, there are some what I would like to point out. First of all, without knowing about this event today, here and tomorrow, I made a smaller research work, so some survey about the history teachers in Latvia, and they mentioned that in general, general knowledge about, let's say, the Second World War, but not only, is decreasing. Good news, there are some topics, 3 or 4, but still our students know. Our students know about Holocaust included, so it's not so bad. But that general tendency is there. And if we speak about this survey, yes, the Holocaust is very, I wouldn't agree with the idea that artificial intelligence is bad. First of all, we are using it as teachers, as we imagine it should be good. And actually there are 2 points. First of all, how we as teachers are using artificial intelligence. So secondly, how our students are using that. And I have to say, for me as a teacher in high school, I can use it, and it's a very useful tool, definitely, to find a certain type of information, to sort it out, and etc. Because I know the history, I know what happened, I know facts, I know the general ideas. But for my students, I decided already a few years ago not to let my students use artificial intelligence because there is a lack of knowledge. And we have to consider, first of all, we have to learn our students what we can do with this. That is the first thing what I wanted to point out, so it is according to how we use it. Secondly, one of the questions was, so how I see the future of teaching the Holocaust, and there are definitely some important things. First of all, our world is changing, definitely. So I don't know how it's nearby, but in Riga we see a lot of students who are participating in our schools, I mean school systems, so high schools, etc. And not only, smaller children as well. Secondly, I see a lot of students from abroad, so our foreign students who are studying here in Latvia. And that is a totally new field here in Latvia. We have to think about it. We have to, actually my idea is not to forgetting about them. So we have to speak with them, we have to teach them as well our history, what happened here. And that is a point what I always was trying to do in my, docent at the University of Turin as well. That's the reason why I'm speaking about that. And that is the second big point what I wanted to say. The third one, the classical teaching methods are still the modern ones. Sorry for saying that. So we need those classical teaching methods, definitely, because I would say even more, that is a way how we can approach our students, how we can tell the true story, what happened with those people who were our neighbors, who were our friends, who were part of our society, by the way. And What I want to say, so we still need to go to those places where it happened, and promote, likely it would be great to go to those places in the winter when it happened, teach them and explain all the situations. At the same time, there is one thing that I want to, last one promise, what I want to say here, before we are going somewhere, before we are going to Rombla or somewhere else, we have to prepare our students. That is extremely important. That is not only as some kind of excursion. That's not the way what we want to have. We have to prepare them, we have to tell them, and the most important thing, it would be great if we would be lucky enough that our students would start to feel, to understand, to feel the similarity with this part of our society that we have. But that is in general what I wanted to say. Of course, I hope there will be some questions, further questions, and we will be able to speak on it.
Thank you. So I would invite the audience to think of their questions, but I want to share my pain and also a question related to it. So, I mean, my experience of working at school was 19 years ago, and there was a reason why I stopped doing that, because I was not good at teaching. You know, I'm a classical trained historian, as some of us here at the table, and one important thing we were taught as history students was source criticism, the importance of analyzing authentic historical sources. Also, we remember that in the context of IRA, in recent years there were campaigns called Protect the Facts, and discussing the relevance and accessibility of authentic sources. And on the other hand, a lot of people are very enthusiastic about the teaching methods. For example, what was mentioned here, the digitized memories of Holocaust survivors, which is a project of the University of South California, when you film an interview, a very long interview with a Holocaust survivor, and then you allow AI to answer the questions for this hologram, so the children can meet the survivor who maybe has passed away 10 years ago and ask him questions, and the survivor will answer using the set of information that the survivor provided in his interview. So on one hand, these are true words of the survivor. Artificial intelligence does not invent any facts or anything, but on the other hand, it's a clearly manipulated source. We're not encountering an authentic document. And I don't want to be rude, but we have parallel. We know that, for example, in the 1960s, Soviets have published a series of books on Nazi atrocities in Latvia, political refugees unmasked, and so on and so forth, where they would use documents on Holocaust in Latvia. They would not add there anything, but they would extract certain passages. They would use scissors and glue to create de facto a new document, although using fragments of an authentic document. So, on the other hand, we can imagine, for example, there was a project of, I think, Ancestry.com, genealogical portal, where they animated the old photos. And among them, they animated the photo of Rt Hon, the leader of uprising in Warsaw Ghetto, where he was telling his story. So, one important thing, it's quite often discussed that current pupils have very different patterns of consuming information and understanding information. So don't we lose the real idea of authenticity of the source, and that our knowledge about history, about the Holocaust history, is derived from authentic sources which are different, which have different degree of being accessible that can be contradictory. So don't lose this, and don't tell our pupils that history is de facto a well-told story, which would make them very vulnerable to all kind of malicious actors, as was mentioned. So I would ask for your reactions on that, on this diatribe. So whoever wants.
I will be the optimistic one here. I agree totally that, of course, there is a problem. And again, it's not a new problem. The problem is trying to make things relevant and forgetting about authenticity. I remember a person once told me, hey, why don't you write this story for young children about this woman? And I said, okay, well, great. Where can I see the testimony? And this person said, I don't have a testimony, but this story could have been. So it sounds like a great story, so why don't you write it and then educate and teach about it? And yes, then we had to go back to speak about truth and how important it is. But I said I'm going to be optimistic because I know that many times I speak about these issues with my kids at home. And when I told them about this kind of project, they said, wow, Mom, it's just not appealing anymore. It's not so interesting to do that. We think that we are using all those methods in order to engage our students. Eventually, they are engaged with one good, true story, and all these issues. I read some of course, research about it. After 2 or 3 questions, they are asking the survivors in the hologram, for example, they just fed up and don't ask anymore. And I think that we all know that it's a human way to learn through narratives. And when the kids are asking questions, these holograms, they don't have the ability to create a narrative from the answers. They don't even know what to ask anymore, those figures. And then we still have a place to come back and say, okay, now let's start speaking about the narrative. There is a beginning, there is a continuity, there is a story here. Yes, we do not have to go back, but we have to learn how to create a narrative with ethical use of AI and the new digital tools. And this is the whole game of Holocaust education.
I think we need to be careful. We need to understand that the medium is not the message. That we kind of fall in love with bringing pictures to life, and we worry about all these things. That's not what this is about. What this is about is telling the truth. Our opponents can't make as many lies up as they can. But if we shade anything, if we cut corners on anything, then our entire pack of cards becomes destroyed. And I don't think we've quite grasped how rapid the change is going to be. We had a fantastic conference in Helsinki. I listened to some experts there, and he said 3 things that gave me the shivers. The first one was that conservatively, this time next year, the power of AI, its capabilities will have grown 10 times. If another scenario is operating, it could actually increase by 100. The second thing, I'm saving the most frightening thing for the last, but the second thing he said was, forget about the century being fought out between the United States and China. Essentially fought out between the big tech companies, who will increasingly become more powerful than national states. But the third thing was this. Every big leap forward, railways, aviation, jets, going to the moon, you require an enormous amount of wealth and infrastructure to do it. AI isn't like that. It's a great leveler. Provided you've got enough electricity supply, the North the South can now take on the North, and that somebody in, say, Gaza will be just as capable of producing something as sophisticated and as clever as comes out of the west coast of America. So I think the point that you were making about laying down a kind of what we can do and what we can't do is right. I think regulation is not going to work. It's just going to move so fast. America is facing against regulation, and that's where most of the action is. But what I do think we should be able to do is be able, in everything we do, to be able to point to a truth. You know, the thing about those testimonies is they're raw testimony. They're not stored and edited. You get every pause, every tear, every cough, every drink of water to show that it's the real thing. So whenever we do things, it needs to be able, a member of the public should be able to strip down to find the original. Because we need to start sharing the original. Too much of Holocaust studies is a bit like this. You know, we've got this is our stuff. And actually what we need to do is to start to work together. And not just among academics, but also among the public. So that the public, the way we win is if we hold the narrative. So that when, you know, something outrageous is shown, people say, nah, that didn't happen. That's wrong. And let's just Google it very quickly, our stuff comes up, and it's pretty clear where the truth lies. We've got a big challenge ahead of us, and we are plodding. We're not making enough progress. We're getting a little frightened, and we need to do the things that we're very good at. Supporting teachers, giving them some confidence, to tackle the truth. And ultimately, when you boil down to what the Holocaust was essentially about, is what happens when government goes bad. When government uses all their powers, from railway timetables to the manufacturing of gas, to kill a race, to kill a people. I've never believed in these lessons of history. I think there are warnings. I think the Holocaust is a great one. I'm sorry I went on a bit, but I just want, we've got to move faster.
Thank you. Building on two thoughts, I consider important and like to start with the idea that every history educator is responsible towards history as a science and education as a science as well. And building on this, our goal is to find a way to reconstruct the truth as to the extent. Yet, I believe that the challenge for all of us is to find a place where to place coma. And there is in Latin there is a saying, agile hendix norshout, in English, to forgive, to execute, and then to find a place where to put coma. So to accept the artificial intelligence's opportunities, for instance, for family history matter, to take the photo of you and your grandmother and asking artificial intelligence, please create this photo as a video where my granny is holding me. This is one experience, but then let's imagine having some harsh photo taken Kaiserwald and then asking artificial intelligence, please recreate this. And then both cases, I do feel frightened. I don't feel comfortable, And therefore, here comes the key question for each and all of us, whether we are ready to recreate the false impression, false representation of history as Professor Siemens mentions in the movies, the narrative being built, and then comes, we can have a look at any historical-ish video or movie created, and we see we see interpretations, not the explanation of history. Therefore, I'm a little bit worried of the tempo that the artificial intelligence being given to us, and it is developing quite fast, and at the same time we aren't trained enough, as Colleen mentioned, to use it properly. So at the moment it's like a monkey holding a grenade, right? And then we have to make a decision whether we are to fancy, as Mr. Nensky said, so an artificial intelligence builds image that can answer questions. By the way, Christian, the Catholic Church adopted this, or the confession room with a moving image of Jesus Christ, and giving an opportunity for people having a conversation with them. Still, I don't feel comfortable with this. You know, it feels like something like sacred. So, long story short, to conclude, I'm sure that our goal is to give an opportunity for everybody that's interested in history, because there must be some interest, and the interest is based on emotions, and if there is an emotion, then comes an opinion. So our goal is to create the authentic experience, yet we have to be careful by choosing specific mediums to achieve that.
Yeah, I also wanted to relate to this topic because I'm a little bit, maybe I'm not, because I use AI a lot, and that's, I don't think that AI is the only issue here. my feeling is that we just moved into the realms of AI, discussing whether it's a threat or whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a tool or whether it's some kind of a deadly weapon. I think what is important is the human side of it, much more important than the AI side of it, because I think the human side is responsible. And here, of course, I'm a little bit, although I'm also trained as a historian, but I'm a little bit, because I'm making films, I'm a little bit in some kind of opposition to the possibility of authentic knowledge, because even history creates narratives, and narratives are artificially constructed elements, although maybe they rely on sources, rely on some testimonies, and so on and so on. Basically, what I'm suggesting that this is our responsibility, that we are trying to find ways how to make, because if AI is creating some kind of knowledge that's mostly indexical, static, so basically we won't involve or engage any new audiences of people who are now living in their young age without any knowledge about Holocaust. We won't engage them with some kind of, even if the AI will create some kind of a knowledge which will be fact-based or the other way around, it will not engage them. We have to find ways how to engage them. We have to make history emotionally engaging. We have to make history, in a way, as some kind of a tool of understanding the world, which is, again, a very difficult task. But what is important, because I think there are several things that humans can do, and machines cannot, at least for the next, at least few decades, hopefully. That first is humanizing history, personalizing history. It's also to do with creating some kind of a local narratives that are, in a way, giving the opportunity to identify with, for those who are receiving or perceiving those narratives. So basically, this is something that even though there is a machinery, there are tools that are also related to the tools that are besides the AI, that there are different kind of augmented reality tools, virtual reality tools that could be used for example, to create a certainly like visceral experience when we talk about recreating or reconstructing Holocaust narratives. So basically, but what is important here is the human side. That we have to be responsible. That we are the ones who are trying to all the time to understand and re-understand how to make history emotional. And this is, for me, that is the most important part. And that's why I think, of course, it's easy for me to speak because I make films, and films are already, the films at their best, they are always, they are recreating history in emotion, so the history of emotion, not history of facts, history of drama, it's mostly history of emotion. So for me, this is something that I really would like to emphasize, our responsibility, how we can these humanized, personalized narratives inherit or to leave as inheritance for the future audiences and society in general.
Actually, as a teacher, I would like to ask you in the audience one question. How much hours do you think do we have in our schools for teaching Holocaust?
Few hours. Less than one period.
More than a lesson, but still, that's totally not enough. So, if we speak about teaching Holocaust, what happened, how it could be possible that happened, so we have to find our ways to teach more, to find the ways how to reach those young students. That is a big issue, big question. And in my opinion, if we speak about tool or not tool, that is only an additional tool at the moment in Latvia at least, artificial intelligence. Most of my colleagues, the history teachers, are using that as a tool, and because of practical reasons. So that's just to stay on the ground.
Teaching profession in Latvia is actually quite autonomous. We can, as teachers, we can choose the methods and approaches that we use at school in teaching. There is almost no control over how we teach. So I agree again with Edgars that we have a huge responsibility towards education as a science. And there is actually a body of evidence acquired over the decades which methods and approaches are the most efficient, which are the best, and so on. So I think that first we should focus on this to tell teachers which are these most effective methods and approaches. And then the next step that we can do is to see and help teachers to see how we can use AI to enhance these already efficient methods and approaches. And I think that is the future in education, not just in teaching history, but in teaching at schools at any subject. The future of education using AI to enhance these already efficient tools in teaching.
Just to add a tiny bit, I'm for 100% sure that all educators, and it doesn't matter whether it is school, university, or museum educators that are connected with history. They do they have taken into account Peter Six's and Tom Norton's idea of historical thinking. There are 6 concepts. Then we have, as colleagues said, specific set of methods. Now we have artificial intelligence that can support us building or refining, let's say, the path or the way or the approach how we are, or let's say, building the framework. And I'm sure that our goal overall is to, first of all, to make decision, are we going to take the history teaching and history privatization as French do, without emotions, or we are going to take the path where we are to use emotions as a other tool towards explaining and speaking about history. Then comes all the sets of things that colleagues mentioned.
Can I just add one more thing to what Edwin's asked the public? How many lessons do we have to teach Holocaust? That is one thing. In lower secondary school, the Holocaust is the topic that is covered in the 9th grade. In the 9th grade, pupil has 12 subjects to master. So that's another thought that we should all think about.
Just give a comparison to the United Kingdom. The Holocaust is the only compulsory item on the national curriculum so far as history is concerned. The government, all governments, have provided resources to ensure that 2 pupils from every secondary school in the country goes to a day visit on Auschwitz, and part of a wider program that involves the whole school. During our presidency, we had an extra conference in Glasgow to try and look at different ways of teaching the Holocaust and essentially to give some confidence to teachers, because in the post-7th of October world, it was a very difficult task and people needed to kind of off-work together.
Last sentence, if I may. So, from my side. Anyway, here's the role of museums, and you said already, and our museum, 3 other museums of my colleagues here as well, are used by our teachers to go to those museums and to teach about Holocaust. And that is actually one of ideas how we can do it, and I would say one good one. Still, there is a need to encourage our teachers to go out from the school, to go to those local places. That makes it, it's more emotions. The Latvian Occupation Museum is one of such places.
Okay, dear friends, so now it's time for your questions. I mean, we have pretty unique facility.
Thank you very much. I'm the chair of the Association of the Museum of the Occupation in Latvia. I would like to ask all of you to perhaps go back a couple of years to the COVID period, because as we were talking about the North Carolina experiment and the holograms responding, I thought of, I was at the European Commission and they got terribly excited about Zoom meetings, and we used to have 7 Zoom meetings a day, and at the end of the day I had absolutely no concept of time or space. And I was thinking of these children or these young people in North Carolina asking these holograms questions, and they're no longer in history. They're no longer in the space and time that this happened in. We're confusing all of the issues, and yes, we're looking for truth, but at the same time, we're bundling a whole lot of periods up together. That was just one of my comments. Thank you very much to Professor Siemens, because I actually wanted to mention that one thing that we have as humans that AI doesn't have, and that is emotions. And that is what teachers can give their pupils. They can give them the emotions, and as Mr. Ebert said, the context before they go and visit the places. And you all mentioned the museums, so let's look at what has worked best. Auschwitz works best. This museum works fantastically. The foreign minister from Ukraine comes here and says, you want to know what's happening in our country, visit the Museum of Occupation in Latvia. So AI is great. It's got lots of potential, but not necessarily in every field. Fantastic in translation, which is the area I was in, but it still needs a human aspect. So, you know, my work is probably just a matter of warning and perhaps looking back and saying, we don't need to use it everywhere. And let's do what we can do well.
I was thinking about a rich discussion. I had one kind of question for the panel was around dramatisation. And I think, you know, for a lot of young people, a lot of what they know or think they know about the Holocaust comes from dramatisation. And we've got some absolutely wonderful examples. I mean, thinking in Latvia, and some of them from at least one member of the panel. Last year we saw an amazing theatrical production of Tolstoy Bard's Leopold Schatz, directed by John Malkovich here in Latvia. So some amazing things. But I sort of come back a bit to Theodor Adorno in his warning that, you know, lyric poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric, and obviously any dramatisation has to some extent sanitize, to some extent simplify, just to get through to audiences. So it feels that there are risks around it as well. So I just wanted to ask the panel where they think is the right place for dramatisation in Holocaust commemoration. So that's a simple question.
A simple question, would like to answer?
Can I? So first I want to say that I totally agree that visiting a place like Auschwitz or being at a place, being at the site is always the most effective possibility, obviously. Or a museum, but taking into account that not everybody can go to Auschwitz, what are your thoughts about those VR tours that go to Auschwitz? So I know that there is such a VR tour. I saw it. I tried it once in Israel, and I know that not everybody's happy with it. So we're happy to hear your opinions.
So I just going to say to the audience, tomorrow at the seminar for educators, we have a presentation by Professor Wagner Baron from the University of Northumbria, who works on a reconstruction tour of Janowska Street concentration camp in Lviv in Ukraine. So if you're interested in particularly these issues of exploring camp and distance, you still can register for a seminar, I guess. So any responses on Ambassador Burles and Ambassador's knowledge?
Well, yes, this is always a tricky question. Where does this dramatization end and where does the truth start? I remember when there was the story of Eva was published, and kids were being introduced to the story of Eva Hyman. Unfortunately, a bit too much through the eyes of an adult today, thinking what would little children would like to see, and then I think that the figure of Eva herself, after reading her authentic diary, she was not really there in the Instagram initiative, and I remember my kids asking themselves and us about this initiative, and my daughter said, "Wow, it's so great! I know that now I'm listening to the story of Eva, And the whole world is also listening to her with me. So this was it was very exciting for her. And my boy was 1 year older than her, said, you cannot get the story of the Holocaust through Instagram. It just doesn't fit there. I said, so how would you do that? Oh, films. Look at the Schindler's List. Such a film, things are so vivid and so rich there. You can understand the Holocaust then. I said, well, there were people who were against Schindler's List as well. And then we started understanding, yes, the question is, where does the truth lay in this project? And this is the truth of the historical complexity also, I would say. If you spoke about the question of the VR, one of the problems is that it is not accurate enough. At least two projects that I know are not accurate enough. If you're doing such a thing, it needs to be very, very accurate. That's one thing. The other thing is that, in a way, we tell the story through VR, right? But we are disconnected. It's not education. You're not creating a discussion. You're not seeing, you spoke about emotions. You're not seeing the eyes of your students when you tell them the story. They don't see your eyes while you're telling the story. So we need to find ways, yes, maybe even to use VR, but in a way that will help us still not miss the human aspect and the ability to create an educational discourse, and not just to separate the learners from realities already. You spoke about it. The question of where am I, where reality starts and where does it finishes. This is something that is very important to take into consideration.
I agree with the point about accuracy for emotion. But to answer your question, for every Schindler's List, pawnbroker, zone of interest, and so on, there's probably 20 the boy in the striped pajamas. And it's almost going to be impossible to keep hold of the narrative. And we talk as though history is absolute. It isn't. History is written by the victim. Winston Churchill once said that history will be very kind to him because he intended to write the history. But if, say, Hitler hasn't been so stupid as to bring in the industrial might of the United States, I think Goebbels would have left a very different view of the Holocaust to the one that we're thinking now. And no matter how prepared we are, no matter how we think we're prepared, when that last survivor dies, everything will change. Because we know that when the last survivor of a big, important event dies, then there'll be a reassessment. I mean, if you think about French Revolution, until the bicentenary, all those books that came out in the 1850s largely framed the history as we move forward. So there will be an enormous change. And, in Britain we commemorated the end of the First World War a few years ago. But the difference is that slightly before the end of that war, my grandfather got out of a trench and walked towards the Germans, and most of the people that he'd been brought up with that were his friends were dead within about 6 minutes. Now nobody doubts that, but there's an oil industry out there, seeking to say the Holocaust didn't exist, that it wasn't that bad. And that's what we're fighting. That's why it's so massively important that we make that the narrative of truth as strong as we can. And that will have a washover effect. in fiction. And maybe, just maybe, now this is almost impossible, but just maybe, it might remove the Americans' desire to have a happy ending in every banal film that they see.
You know, I think it's really difficult to draw a line where there is a like decent or acceptable or legit dramatization and where it becomes something of a threat or not really working for the purposes of remembrance of Holocaust. But what I know is when it's good, because the good dramatization is the one where the audience, whether it's a theatrical production or literature or film, where the audience have to invest intellectually. So not where you are just a passive viewer of something that is drama on screen, for example, or drama on stage, but where you have to invest intellectually, and there is a process that in a way starts there, and the process is your process of your personal research on the topic, because when you have to invest yourself intellectually and also emotionally, of course, then afterwards you are interested for some future research, for some future knowledge that you can gain about the topic. And this is for me the best result that we can get from dramatization, that this is something that in a way activates the audience, where the audience becomes the future researchers, not in the sense of academical research, but the research that where, for example, then academical research can help to gain more knowledge, more information, and also that it disseminates from this one person who has become active from watching a particular dramatization to disseminate into like further groups of people. So that is for me the best examples of dramatization or the best cases. But I also wanted to relate to VR. I think that this VR is always a problem because sometimes you are squeezed in a small room and you put your goggles and then you find yourself, I don't know, in the oceans maybe, or maybe in a cave where Jesus is trying to wake up Lazarus, and it's kind of a little bit, not really, you are feeling comfortable with this, but I think, again, this is the question of generations, and I think it's something that we sometimes tend to feel not really comfortable with. It's quite comfortable for those who are much younger than us, and this is the question where are we ready to react to that, or are we just like putting a fence between these possible tools and saying no, this is not going to work. So basically, I think even though if it's not really for us, then we have to see the opportunity if the opportunity is there.
I think that there is definitely a place for dramatization in learning process at schools, because dramatization is an excellent tool to deepen the discussion about the event and also to move forward with the discussion about this event. Because at some point, when you teach something, you get stuck, that you cannot interest more students about the event, for example. So dramatization is a good way how to show, like, this is something that we have been learning this far, or, as I said, to open new discussion about the event. The problem is that we don't have that much good dramatizations to use in school. In Liepāja Theatre, we now have theatre, The Diary of Anne Frank. I wouldn't say the best dramatization, but still we take our students, our pupils there, we watch the display, we discuss, before we bring students to the theatre, we discuss what are they going to watch, and then when we come back, we continue the discussion. So yes, the dramatization, there is always place for dramatization in teaching and learning history.
And building on the idea that dramatization helps to catch the attention of students in the light of the times when we have millions of moving images and videos in social media, by using sound effects, by using videos, by using content that is probably a little bit disturbing yet safe for all the audiences. We are getting the emotions that is a base for the opinions that we want that the students would create. And in here, considering the dramatization after January 27th, 1945, when Auschwitz was liberated, there were groups of German civilians brought there. And then, as far as I remember, one of the thoughts were, why you made us feel so bad as we were not involved. So here comes the question of whether we want that the students would touch history that much that would hurt them, and at the same time creates a huge distance between them and the interest of continuing teaching or learning, or just learning or investigating history or let's say recent past. So the dramatization is important as it helps to build the emotions and opinions.
Any questions from the audience?
Maybe it's a comment, I don't know yet. My name is Maya, and I'm working in Jones Lipke Memorial. And I understand that this room is full of trained historians, educators, so I forgive you that you're only focused on the past. But actually, it's about the future that we should remember. Because actually, we are training our next generation with the story also about Holocaust. Yeah? It's not only, they will not grow up historians. We are talking with next janitors, next doctors, next whatever. And from the rescue stories, I know that every single one of them may be in this situation when they have to help a neighbor. And in today's world, I wouldn't dare to say that, I don't know, we have learned the lesson and these horrible atrocities will never ever happen. We can see. And just the knowledge about the Holocaust does not prevent from some weird stuff going on in people's mind, because I have met people who know a lot about the Holocaust. They would pass all the exams, whatever the teacher values them or AI, but they can, for example, legitimize what happened on 7th of October. Yeah, so it doesn't, just the knowledge does not protect. There's something more. And I believe in storytelling, and I believe in this middleman between history and the children there, who would be very responsible towards the truth, the facts, yet also invested in the young people, the young minds in front of them. And whatever tool this person would, we all have our own tools. Some is better with this, some is better with that, some loves to put everything in tables, like I will explain you the history. Whatever tool we will, because we have to choose our authentic tool to kind of translate the past better to the future generation. So I think it's a common question. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. My name is Lena Turek and I work in the space of disinformation and countering disinformation. So I was listening and thinking that we are a bit in trouble probably because, because of what's happening in social media in Europe, we are a bit more safe because there is a DSA Act and there is regulation, but we know that anti-Semitism is being spread on social media, and there are some social media companies that are better, like for example Meta, although they're not really good, but there's TikTok and Telegram. And especially if we look at Russian language space, there has been a rise of anti-Semitism, and I'm not sure if it's ever going away, especially today. And I think everyone working in the civil society is really worried also about lack of funding and lack of support. So my question is actually to teachers. Do you see, so if we look at the content on social media about Israel currently, it lacks nuance, it is very aggressive. If we look outside, who is organizing protests and the slogans they're having, these are quite radicalized opinions, which is normal when you're young. You're not ready for the nuance, right? You really see the world black or white. Do you see at schools that kids are more interested in these topics? Are they becoming more radicalized in their opinions and stronger in their anti-Israel or anti-Semitic opinions? Or you haven't noticed this at all?
The trouble is that not only teachers don't know what's going on in the smartphones of our pupils, not even the parents know what's going on in there. But of course, sometimes we notice things, and sometimes we hear pupils talk, and yes, they are discussing these events. They are discussing what happened on October 7th, and they are taking sides, of course. And of course, the sides they are taking depends on what they read, what they see on social media. And they consume TikTok, they consume Telegram, they consume other social media. And that's the side they take, whichever is more, whichever side they relate more. Yes, but we don't. The part that we see what's going on in their smartphones is like 0.001%. It's really, really tiny.
Other responses?
Yeah. This whole situation, I would say, is more difficult and divided into smaller parts as well. So first of all, do we like or not, we have divided society where we have different opinions. And one opinion is from, let's say, that how I should formulate it, from post-Sovietic area, so to say. And many people, I have worked in Russian-speaking schools, I have seen different things, definitely. And that depends from class to class. To judge only to say this part isn't good or this part is good, I wouldn't do so. So we have to see the situation, and but most important part on all this question, it's not about how they see it. We have to be ready to speak about it. We have to be ready, and if we are, then we will be able to explain. That's the main answer from my side of it. And as a teacher, I have faced a lot of different questions from my students. That school where I work is a good one, progressive one. Still, the opinions in their homes are very different. And if I know how to answer, if I know what happened, it's very easy for me to. Very easy, what does it mean? It's easy, definitely, for me to answer. But I have to say, not all teachers are following all what is happening. And that could be a big big issue, big problem. So we have to learn more by ourselves to be able to speak, not to be afraid to speak about it, even if the opinions are different.
Thank you so much for such fascinating discussion. I have a question about the appropriate age of when children should learn about the Holocaust at school. Times have shifted a lot in the past maybe 20 years when a lot of us were raised at home by Holocaust survivors who not only would tell us what happened to them, but also tell their friends and their neighbors in great detail. I think I was maybe 3 when my grandparents discussed it in really graphic detail. But there's a new generation now of even Jewish kids who have no idea because their parents are sheltering them, the schools are sheltering them. They go to a Jewish school, but they actually don't know what Holocaust is. And not to mention children who go to, who are not Jewish, and who are in like kind of general education. And I think you mentioned previously that in Latvia, children learn about Holocaust in grade 9, which means they're 15, which means they probably have held a phone in their hands for at least, like 10 years. And I worked with kids who were about 12 years old, and they're all on TikTok, very active on TikTok. So let's say they already see about, what's happening in the Middle East right now. They already know about what's happening in Israel. And of course, all of that social media is adjusted to the algorithms. If whatever is being shared in their peer group is whatever pops up more and more. So they're forced to take a position without knowing anything, without knowing any history. And I'm just wondering whether it's necessary to change the age of when children learn about that. And just wondering what your opinions would be.
Just really please introduce yourself.
Sorry, my name is Esther. I'm a researcher. I work with Jewish cultural heritage studies.
So first of all, what I have to say here, that is not so that we don't speak about Holocaust over the area. That's not true. We have different school classes. We have subjects where we are speaking about different days and datas, what we are remembering, what we are celebrating, etc., including Holocaust as well. So it depends from our teachers that definitely how much we speak about them, all those topics. So it's not so that we are not speaking about it. And you said even Jewish secondary school in Riga, I worked there for 8 years. So I know exactly what I have taught there. So that's a while ago, but still. And we collaborated with other teachers who are teaching Jewish culture. Jewish religion as well, and all different other things as well. So definitely the situation, at least when I worked at that school, Shimon Dubnova Secondary School in Riga, they knew enough about Holocaust. And for my part, I can say many of my students went to Israel and stayed there and are living there at this very moment.
The greatest education I ever met was the late Professor Yuda Bauer of blessed memory. He was very clear on this. And he said 14. And the reason he said it was because you can't teach Holocaust light. If you're going to do the Holocaust, you've got to understand the full impact of the Holocaust with all its unpleasantness, and that's why he said 14. I'm not an educationalist, I don't know, but sticking with Yuda Bauer has kept me happy for many years.
I will say something that is not complying with Yuda Bauer's, Professor Yuda Bauer's opinion. I was a history teacher in high school for many years, and then I decided to do primary schools in Israel, where of course things are much more different. The thing is that you don't have to teach about the Holocaust as light Holocaust in order to do that in primary school or before the age of 14. The thing is that historical concepts are being developed in our minds through time. And encountering the students with this complex story only in middle school, when they already have a lot of other questions about who to believe in this world and what should I do in this world, this is not the time to only then tell them the story about the Holocaust. Since the Holocaust, as I said before, is also connected to values, to human values, to all the basic values that we want to teach about, we have to find a way to speak about it in the times and in the stages where they develop their point of view, their values already. So we, since we had to deal with it a lot in Israel, we have developed materials that are appropriate for younger students, I can say that from 8th grade, children in the age of 8, 9, 10, you can see them online on Yad Vashem's website. We have short films accompanied by animation, very appropriate stories of survivors telling us something about what they want to tell the world after their experience in a very positive way. So yes, there are tools to do that. It needs to be known how to do that. But since it's a part of life and developing our values, it needs to be there before that.
When we are talking about when to start teaching about Holocaust at schools, I think we should first differentiate two things here. One is teaching, which is a very complex thing, and teaching is not just standing in the front of classroom, giving a lecture or giving tasks for students to do. Teaching is very complex, and what we teach depends on other things that teachers don't control, like national curricula. Or when it comes to history teaching, it depends very much on chronology. I can't speak about Holocaust before I have thought about things that brought to the Holocaust. So when it comes to teaching, it's already said that we teach about Holocaust in 9th grade. That's the first time they encounter Holocaust as a topic in history. But then there is another thing that is happening in schools and that we can encourage and promote, and it's storytelling. And there is always place, you can always find a perfect moment to tell stories. To tell these stories even in primary school. Like Edwin's mentioned, we talk at schools about the Remembrance Days. So that's a perfect moment to talk about Holocaust. Or we have local heroes who saved Jewish people during the Holocaust. That's another perfect moment when to talk about it. And then you are not, then you don't depend on curriculum and you don't depend on chronology. It's a good time to tell this story.
Especially in Nepal.
Yeah.
And to tell the story, just to build on that, well, I'm not shy, so I asked ChatGPT. So, what's the appropriate age when it's suitable to teach about the Holocaust? And ChatGPT says that's starting from 6. Yeah, right. So, and some truth there is, as if we are to look from what is important for kids. So if we want to reach kids, we have to know what is important for them and what they do like. We know that kids do like heroes, right? Kids are very fair, kids are going to say this is good and this is bad. And then therefore, the thing that we can do is we can start telling stories about how it is being a human in different times of humanity and of courage. And then, slowly but steadily, building on that, of course we can move on, as colleague said, to the historical matter or history matter of Holocaust as the isolated, let's say, topic in the national standards. But the main challenge is to see, first of all, what's the audience? Are we having kids whose grandparents were involved in any matter? First of all, second of all, what kind of opportunities are there from the local history's perspective, some historical sites or monuments or places, anything that would be easy to access and touch. As we know, kids do enjoy tactile things. And last but not least is teachers' set of skills. How equipped is a teacher with different methods to teach not the content but these attitudes and values. And then we can start from age 6 because ChatGPT said so.
Thank you. I would say the good thing about ChatGPT is that whenever you mention it, everybody starts Googling. So it's an advantage of AI, at least one small but useful. So I think we will stop our discussion here. I have several other questions that appeared during our discussion, but probably I'll have to postpone it for another seminar or event. And of course, concerning the usage of technology, not only AI, but also there's a huge topic to discuss, gamification of education, and is it ethical to have a mode for Call of Duty game called Liberation of Auschwitz, which exists and is popular. So thank you so much for being with us here, and obviously things that we discuss are relevant not only for Holocaust education, but addressing any complicated issues. And unfortunately, this part of the world, 20th century history, was very complicated. Unfortunately, our current history continues to be complicated, so it may be relevant also for our approach to how we discuss current issues with school children or with any sort of our audiences. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, our great panelists. And so you can continue discussing informally now, and hopefully to see some of you tomorrow at the seminar on Museum Jews and Thank you so much.